The war had already consumed half the galaxy, leaving behind dead worlds and silent stars. The alien fleets hung like shadows between the stars, massive in number, cold in purpose. The Council had declared their victory months ago. They believed no power could rise against them. They believed the Deathworlders, the humans of Earth, were gone forever, scattered, hunted, erased. Their names were now spoken only in whispers, half in fear and half in mockery. But deep inside the Warzone, something began to move. It was small at first, almost invisible, like a shadow sliding across the sensors of their great warships. The commanders dismissed it as interference. The technicians tried to recalibrate the systems. But then, one by one, entire fleets lost contact. In the control room of a flagship, an alien commander leaned forward, staring at the hollow screen as lines of text vanished into nothing. The fleet ahead of them was no longer responding. No explosions. No distress signals. Just silence. His officers tried to reach them again, but the static only grew louder, like a storm approaching through the void. The commander's breath caught in his throat. In the far corner of the display, a faint dot appeared. It moved slowly, without transponders, without ID codes. It was like a ghost ship. One of the junior officers laughed nervously, saying it must be a drifting wreck. But deep down, they all felt something colder, a presence watching them through the black. Across the Warzone, similar reports began flooding in. Outposts lost power. Patrol ships vanished without a trace. Distress calls were cut mid-scream. And then came the strangest thing of all. Their sensors began picking up faint human signals, the kind they hadn't heard in decades. At first, the Council dismissed it as a trick, some old relic floating through space. But then the lights started to go out. Whole stations went dark as if the stars themselves were being swallowed. Panic spread through command channels. One voice asked the question no one wanted to hear, what if it's them? The alien commander aboard the fleet stationed closest to the signal gripped the edge of his chair. The black shape grew larger on the display. It moved slowly but with purpose, like a predator walking into a room full of prey. No heat signature. No visible engines. It shouldn't have been able to move like that. But it did. When the signal reached a certain point, their screens flickered. One by one, their systems began shutting down. Communication fell first, then shields, then weapons. The bridge lights dimmed to a dull red. The crew scrambled, shouting over each other. But the commander knew. Whatever was out there wasn't just attacking. It was hunting. On another side of the Warzone, a massive alien fleet prepared to intercept. Thousands of ships aimed their weapons at the void. But the shape didn't care. It slid through their detection grid as if they didn't exist. One cruiser tried to open fire. Its cannons charged, flared for a second, then died. Silence again. One officer screamed as every star around them seemed to blink out, replaced by a growing darkness. The crew of the flagship watched in horror as their escort ships began to vanish from the radar. Not destroyed, gone. Like they had never been there. Then, for the first time in years, a sound played through the communication lines. It was old, rough, almost human. A voice cut through every frequency, echoing in a way no machine could block. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a greeting. It was a statement. We're back. The entire Warzone froze. The commander of the alien fleet felt something he hadn't felt since the early days of the war, fear. The kind that seeps through armor and steel. The kind that makes even the most powerful ship feel small. The shape grew clearer now. It was no wreck. It was a warship unlike anything the galaxy had seen in decades. Built of dark steel, covered in old Terran markings that no one dared to believe still existed, it moved with quiet confidence. No lights. No signals. Just power. The alien fleets opened fire in blind panic. Thousands of plasma beams lit up the void, but they hit nothing. The Deathworlder ship slid between them like smoke, untouchable, unseen. And then the alien fleets realized something worse. It wasn't alone. Behind the first shape, more signals appeared, dozens, then hundreds, spreading out like the wings of a beast. One by one, Human warships came out of the dark, surrounding the Warzone like a storm. No one had ever seen them arrive. No one knew where they had been hiding all these years. But they were here now. The Deathworlders had returned, and their silence was more terrifying than any roar. On the bridge of the alien flagship, the commander finally understood why the old veterans used to speak the word human like a curse. He whispered to himself, too quiet for his crew to hear, "We should have finished them." But it was too late for regrets. His screens showed one final image before the power died completely. A single glowing Terran symbol burning bright against the black. It was not a warning. It was a promise. In that moment, across the entire Warzone, alien soldiers and officers realized the truth. The Council was wrong. Earth was not gone. Humanity had never surrendered. They had been waiting, building, preparing. And now, they were here to finish what was started. No fleet could stop them. Not anymore. As the alien fleet drifted helplessly, their engines dead and weapons useless, the first Deathworlder ship broke radio silence again. The voice was calm, steady, almost gentle, but filled with something deeper than hate. "This is not your galaxy anymore." And with that, the Warzone changed forever. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first impact was not a battle. It was a statement that echoed across the stars, silent but louder than any weapon. Hours after the Deathworlders' first shadow slipped through the Warzone, the alien fleets still couldn't make sense of what they had seen. Their patrols had vanished. Stations that once shined bright in the dark were gone without leaving even a trail of debris. No explosions. No alarms. Only empty space. In the alien command halls, admirals argued, blaming technical failures or rogue mercenaries. But every explanation crumbled as more fleets went silent. One moment their signals were strong, the next they were erased from existence. The Council still tried to calm its people, calling it a malfunction. But deep down, everyone knew something old was moving through the void. In a fortified sector near the front line, 300 ships from the Coalition fleet floated in perfect formation, their cannons charged, their shields raised. They were the strongest armada in the entire quadrant. The commanders were proud of their numbers. No enemy had ever broken their wall. They believed they were untouchable. But in the dark between the stars, the Deathworlders moved like a tide. No flashing engines. No beacons. Only cold, patient movement. The alien ships didn't see them coming. They didn't even know they were surrounded until it was too late. The first ship to fall didn't explode. It simply lost all power at once, like a candle crushed between fingers. Its captain tried to scream a warning, but his voice never reached the others. One by one, more ships followed. The alien radar screens filled with static. Lights dimmed. Hulls creaked as invisible energy passed through them. An entire section of the fleet disappeared without a sound. In the command center, panic spread like fire. They tried to relink the formation. Nothing worked. Their strongest defenses were useless. Something was out there, something they couldn't track or stop. The flagship commander stood frozen, staring at the black screens. He had fought dozens of battles, crushed rebellions, burned worlds, but nothing had ever felt like this. This wasn't war. This was a hunt. A voice on the comm shouted that the enemy had hacked their navigation grid, but then that voice cut off too. A cold shiver ran through the crew. Their fortress of ships had become a trap. Then it happened. A pulse ripped through the entire battlefield, silent but deadly. Shields collapsed in seconds. Engines screamed before shutting down. Within minutes, the mighty fleet, the same fleet that once crushed planets, was reduced to drifting metal. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single explosion lit the void. It was as if something had reached in and ripped the heart out of their armada without mercy. On the ground, the Council's war rooms erupted in chaos. Generals yelled over each other, demanding explanations. They sent emergency fleets, but every reinforcement arrived only to find empty space where their fleets had been. No wreckage. No survivors. Just silence and a growing fear that the legends were real. At the edge of the Warzone, an alien communications station received a transmission. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't even hidden. It came through on an old human frequency that hadn't been used in decades. A single image filled the screens. The Terran War emblem, black and sharp against a field of burning red. No voice. No warning. Just a symbol that everyone in the galaxy knew, the mark of Deathworlders. For the younger soldiers, it meant nothing. But for the older ones, it was a nightmare come alive. They remembered the stories. They remembered the worlds that burned the last time humans went to war. A single alien scout ship managed to survive long enough to see them. At first, the pilot thought it was a storm of meteors. Then the shape resolved. Dozens of massive ships, black as night, gliding forward with no visible engines, no heat signatures, only power. They moved like predators. Cold, patient, certain. The pilot tried to send coordinates, but a blinding white flash filled his cockpit. His ship disappeared into the void like all the others. Inside the enemy fleets that remained, tension turned into terror. Officers screamed, commanders ordered full retreat, but it was too late. The Deathworlders were already in the middle of them. No one saw the first strike. One cruiser simply cracked in half without a sound. Another began spinning, its crew gone before they could understand what hit them. Panic rippled through the formation as their greatest fleet became nothing more than targets in a silent storm. Some tried to fire. Their weapons flared once, then died. The humans didn't answer with words. They answered with precision. Each shot from their invisible guns hit its target perfectly, slicing through armor like paper. Whole ships disappeared without leaving a trace. No screaming engines. No flashing beams. Just clean, cold destruction. The galaxy's greatest fleet was being unmade one ship at a time. On the Council's central world, the broadcasts went dark. Emergency channels crackled with fragmented messages. They are here. We can't stop them. They see everything. And then one chilling whisper that spread faster than any order, Deathworlders. The word carried weight. It carried fear. It carried the memory of every empire that tried to break Earth and failed. The fleet that was supposed to defend the front line no longer existed. What remained of it drifted silently through space, powerless and broken. The humans hadn't needed to show their faces. They let their silence speak for them. For years, the galaxy had mocked Earth, calling them weak. Now, without a single speech or a single demand, the Deathworlders had shown what true power was. In the final moments of the battle, a single alien officer on a dying cruiser looked out through the cracked glass of the bridge. In the distance, through the smoke of wrecked ships, he saw it. A Terran warship, enormous and quiet, its hull scarred by old wars but burning with new purpose. It didn't speed toward them. It simply glided, slow and steady, like a predator that knew its prey was already trapped. The officer closed his eyes. In the dark, he could hear the voice from earlier echoing across the stars, "We're back." And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't a return. This was a reckoning. The Deathworlders hadn't just entered the war zone. They owned it now. The galaxy had no idea how bad it was about to get. The alien coalition had gathered everything they had left. After the silent slaughter of their frontline fleets, they decided they could not let this unknown enemy strike again without meeting them head-on. Every surviving commander received the same order from the Council. Crush whatever was hiding in the dark, no matter the cost. So they came, warships from a dozen species, engines burning bright, filling the black like a wall of steel and fire. The Warzone had never seen such a gathering before. Massive carriers, Fortress-class dreadnoughts, interceptor wings, all standing shoulder to shoulder, their weapons pointed at the void. They believed their numbers would save them. They believed overwhelming firepower would stop the shadows. But they didn't understand who they were waiting for. On the command bridge of the Coalition's largest dreadnought, the Supreme Admiral leaned over the glowing display. Thousands of ships moved into position, their weapon signatures lighting up the dark like constellations. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. Every sensor sweep still came back the same. Empty space, no heat signatures, no enemy transponders. Just silence. That silence was heavier than the fleet itself. He ordered his ships to widen their scans. Still nothing. It was as if the shadows they were hunting had simply disappeared. But the Deathworlders had not disappeared. They were watching. Hidden between sensor echoes, their ships moved like predators, studying every formation, every weak spot, every vulnerable point in the alien wall. They didn't rush. They didn't reveal themselves. They were patient. On the outer rim of the fleet, a single alien scout picked up a faint signal, a pulse, quick and quiet. Before he could even report it, his ship was gone. The signal vanished with him. No explosion. No alarm. Just silence. Panic started to creep through the smaller ships first. Pilots whispered to each other on private channels. They had all heard the stories. Some of the older soldiers remembered the last war, when Deathworlders didn't come with parades or speeches. They came like the storm. They didn't conquer territory. They erased fleets. Fear is a quiet thing, and it spread fast. Then it began. The lights on the far edge of the formation flickered. A cruiser went dark. Then another. And another. Their signals blinked out one after the other like candles in the wind. No enemy fire was detected. No movement was seen. Only the silence eating away at their lines. The commanders shouted orders to tighten the formation, but it didn't matter. The Deathworlders were already inside. In the dark of space, a Deathworlder frigate glided between two massive alien carriers like a shark slipping through waves. It didn't fire. It simply slid past, silent and unseen, leaving behind a soft electronic pulse that infected both carriers in an instant. Their systems screamed and died. Crews ran to manual controls, but nothing answered. The two mighty ships, each capable of leveling a world, were reduced to blind floating giants in seconds. The panic on their bridges grew louder, but no help came. On another flank, a destroyer commander shouted into the comm for backup. He had seen something, a shadow moving faster than light, right past his formation. He turned his guns, but before he could fire, every display in his ship showed the same two words in ancient human language. Words no alien crew member could fully understand, but their tone was clear: "We're here." Then his ship went silent too. The coalition admirals still couldn't find a target. Their weapons pointed in every direction, but they were blind. The Deathworlders were moving too fast, striking from angles no alien pilot had trained for. Their ships didn't glow, didn't leave heat trails, didn't broadcast signals. They were ghosts with guns. When the first attack finally came, it wasn't an explosion, it was precision. A massive alien battleship, the pride of an entire empire, split in half down the middle. No one saw the projectile. No one heard the shot. One moment it was whole, the next it was two drifting chunks of burning metal. The sound of that destruction rippled through the fleet like a scream in a graveyard. Panic consumed the formation. Hundreds of alien ships opened fire at the empty void, flooding the darkness with plasma bolts and missiles. Their own light blinded them. In the confusion, Deathworlder ships danced through their own shadows, slipping between the blasts like hunters in a storm. Every missile that missed gave away their panic. Every second they fired blindly gave the humans more time to close in. Then came the second wave. Small Deathworlder corvettes, nearly invisible, punched holes through the outer perimeter with silent strikes. Power grids shorted out. Engines burst into flame. Alien pilots screamed through comms as their own systems turned against them. The Deathworlders were not just attacking with weapons, they were controlling the battlefield itself. In the central command room of the Dreadnought, the Supreme Admiral finally saw it, a flicker on the long-range screen. A shape, blacker than the void around it. Huge. It didn't broadcast a single signal. It simply moved forward, slowly and confidently, like something that knew it could not be stopped. Then more shapes followed. 10, 20, 50. The entire Deathworlder fleet emerged from the dark like a rising storm. The Admiral's throat went dry. He whispered the word every alien feared to say out loud: humans. The comm channels filled with overlapping voices. Some were shouting commands, others begging for reinforcements. But there would be no reinforcements. Everyone who could help was already here, and it wasn't enough. The Deathworlders didn't rush their attack. They moved with precision, cutting one ship after another. The alien fleets tried to retreat, but their jump drives were already jammed. Every door they thought they could use to escape had been closed before the battle even began. The humans hadn't just arrived. They had planned this moment long before the coalition even knew they were coming. The dreadnought shook as the first blast from a Deathworlder railgun hit it. Shields cracked. Metal screamed. The Supreme Admiral gripped the edge of the console as his officers scrambled. He gave the order to fire everything they had, but deep down, he already knew. No fleet could stop this. No army could hold against something like this. As the alien formation collapsed, Deathworlder ships circled the survivors like wolves. They didn't speak. They didn't demand. They simply destroyed everything that stood in their way. And somewhere in that silence, every alien soldier understood the truth. This wasn't just war. This was payback. The void burned with the light of dying fleets. What was once the strongest armada in the galaxy was now a graveyard of drifting metal. The Deathworlders didn't celebrate. They didn't cheer. They moved on to the next target with the same cold precision. They weren't fighting for glory. They were ending something. And as the last alien ship went dark, the only sound left was the quiet hum of human engines. A shadow that once disappeared from the galaxy had returned, stronger than ever. And the galaxy, for the first time in a long time, was afraid. The galaxy had never seen a fleet like this. For years, alien governments had mocked Earth, calling humans a forgotten species that couldn't even defend their own skies. But that night, as the darkness of space burned with distant wreckage, those same governments fell silent. The coalition fleet, the strongest wall the Council had ever built, had been shredded like paper. Every surveillance satellite, every listening post, every hidden eye in the Warzone picked up the same thing: a massive power surge in the black. It was slow, deep, and terrifyingly controlled. It was not the chaos of a desperate force. It was the calm of a predator moving into position. And when the shadows parted, the Deathworlder fleet finally revealed itself. First came the lead ship, a black spear slicing through the void, moving without sound, without lights, without weakness. Its surface reflected no starlight, only darkness, like the void itself had taken shape. Alien analysts stared at the transmission in disbelief. This wasn't an old human destroyer or a rusty colony cruiser. This was something far beyond what they remembered. Reinforced hull plating, unknown energy signatures, new engine systems that left no trace. It looked like a war god forged it. Behind it, row after row of black warships emerged: battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, and ships so massive their shadows covered entire fleets. They didn't roar or shine. They simply existed, and that alone made the enemy tremble. On the bridge of the alien High Command dreadnought, the Supreme Admiral stood frozen. His fleet was gone, but he had a direct visual now. He could see the Deathworlder fleet for the first time, and it felt like looking at the end of everything he had ever believed. They weren't survivors. They weren't rebels. They were an army built in the dark, perfected in silence, forged for this exact moment. He could hear the officers behind him whispering, their voices shaking. One asked if they should retreat. Another said retreat wouldn't matter. The Deathworlder flagship came to a halt in front of the broken coalition lines. Its size alone dwarfed anything in the alien fleet. Dozens of smaller ships flanked it, perfectly in sync, like a single living organism. Alien ships tried to scan it, but their systems returned nothing, just static and a cold error message that repeated again and again, no data found. It was as if the ship didn't exist at all. A pulse rolled across the battlefield, a deep, low vibration that traveled through space like a heartbeat. Every alien ship felt it. Shields flickered. Weapons glitched. Systems stuttered. The pulse didn't break anything. It simply reminded them that the humans were in control. And then the lights on the Deathworlder ships came on. Not bright. Not flashy. Just a soft, steady crimson glow. It was the kind of light that didn't need to shout to be feared. The Alien Council was watching all of it from their secure station light years away. Holograms filled the chamber, showing the growing fleet in real time. Some of the alien leaders tried to sound brave, shouting that the humans wouldn't dare to attack their core worlds. But their voices cracked with fear. They remembered the stories. The last time humans had been pushed too far, they didn't fight for territory. They burned the enemy down until there was nothing left. Back in the Warzone, the Supreme Admiral opened a channel, demanding identification. For a long moment, nothing answered. The entire battlefield was dead quiet. Then a voice came through every open frequency at once. Calm. Deep. Human. You've had your time. That was all. No speeches. No threats. Just the sound of a predator speaking to prey. The alien officers panicked. Half their fleet tried to reposition. Some begged for reinforcements that weren't coming. Others aimed their weapons at the Deathworlder ships, hoping that firing first would give them some kind of advantage. But it didn't matter. The humans had already chosen this battlefield. They had already won the moment they revealed themselves. Inside the Deathworlder flagship, silence ruled. Human officers stood in black uniforms, their faces calm and hard. Every movement was precise, like they had trained for this night for years. And they had. Humanity had been watching the galaxy grow comfortable. Watching the Council build its fleets, crush its enemies, and mock Earth as a forgotten name. They had waited. Not to survive, but to return. The first line of Deathworlder dreadnoughts aligned their cannons. They didn't need to shout orders. They didn't need to warn anyone. The alien fleets saw the movement and opened fire in blind fear. Plasma beams and missiles lit up the void. Explosions tore through the darkness. But the humans didn't even flinch. Their shields absorbed everything like waves breaking against a cliff. Not a single human ship faltered. Then came the answer. The Deathworlder flagship fired a single railgun round. Just one. It moved faster than any alien scanner could track, a blur of pure force cutting through the battlefield. It hit the alien dreadnought that stood at the center of their broken fleet. A second later, the ship was gone. Not destroyed in pieces. Gone. A hole where it once was. The shockwave rolled across the Warzone like thunder. The alien formation broke before the humans even launched their second shot. Smaller Deathworlder ships moved like predators through a herd. Corvettes and strike craft sliced through escort fleets, slipping between defensive screens like they didn't exist. Every alien ship that tried to escape found their navigation blocked. Every ship that tried to fight found their weapons disabled. Every ship that tried to hide was already surrounded. The humans weren't fighting for survival. They were executing a plan that had been written long ago. From orbit, distant observers watched the battle unfold in silence. Alien commentators who once laughed at Earth now struggled to breathe as they saw their proud fleets crumble in minutes. This was not a war. This was a lesson. On the alien command bridge, the Supreme Admiral fell back into his chair. His voice was a whisper now. He realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't aiming for their strongest ships. They were taking out the command cores first. Every move was precise. Every target mattered. It was surgical destruction. No wasted fire. No emotion. Just cold, perfect execution. Within an hour, the battlefield was theirs. Wreckage floated silently. Flames burned in the void like dying stars. The alien fleet, once proud and loud, was nothing but broken metal drifting into darkness. The Deathworlder flagship remained at the center of it all, glowing like the eye of a storm. The humans didn't speak again. They didn't need to. Their presence said everything. This was not the beginning of a war. This was the return of something the galaxy had forgotten to fear. And as the alien command watched their greatest defense vanish in a single night, the truth finally settled in their bones. Humanity hadn't come to bargain. They had come to end it. Across the galaxy, whispers spread like fire. The Deathworlders are back. Entire worlds held their breath. Councils scrambled. Armies trembled. But it didn't matter. The Warzone belonged to Earth now, and the galaxy's balance of power would never be the same again. The storm began without warning. One moment, the alien fleet hung in space like a wall of metal, burning with thousands of engines, ready to defend what was left of their empire. The next moment, that same fleet was swallowed by a wave of fire and silence. The Deathworlders didn't come in waves. They came like a single, sharp strike, as if they had rehearsed this battle 1,000 times in the dark. Their ships didn't roar. They moved with a cold, controlled precision that only made the fear worse. It was no longer a mystery who ruled the Warzone. It was only a matter of how long the enemy could survive. The alien coalition still had numbers. Thousands of ships, hundreds of planetary defense platforms, enough firepower to destroy a star system twice over. But numbers meant nothing here. Human ships darted between enemy formations like blades through water, silent, invisible, devastating. The alien fleets tried to form defensive lines. But every time they tightened their ranks, the Deathworlders tore them apart from the inside. Their ships didn't just attack. They dismantled entire formations with perfect timing. On the bridge of an alien carrier, Captain Rahaten gripped the edge of the command table. His heart pounded as red alerts flashed across every screen. They're inside the formation, one of his officers shouted, panic twisting every word. I know, he whispered back, his voice breaking. The radar showed shadows, faint signatures that moved like ghosts. He tried to lock onto one. Before he could, the screen blinked out. A second later, the ship beside his carrier exploded into a silent burst of light, ripped in half by an invisible railgun round. He didn't even see where it came from. Across the entire Warzone, this pattern repeated again and again. Alien commanders barked desperate orders. Fleets fired wildly into the void. It didn't matter. The humans moved too fast, too quietly, too smart. Their ships didn't need to be everywhere. A few well-placed strikes tore holes in fleets that took years to build. Each hit was deliberate. Each kill was clean. Then came the sound no alien soldier wanted to hear. The humans switched from silence to attack formation. The crimson glow on their ships grew brighter, stretching across their black hulls like veins of living fire. The Deathworlder fleet spread out in a wide arc, surrounding the entire battlefield. The alien coalition realized too late that they weren't fighting against a scattered force. They were standing in the middle of a trap that had been set long before they even arrived. The Deathworlder flagship led the charge. Massive railguns roared to life. The sound didn't travel through space, but every alien who saw the flashes felt the terror all the same. A single round from the flagship's main cannon shredded through 3 enemy battleships in a straight line. It wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't even a war anymore. It was a storm. Smaller human ships slipped through gaps like hunters, planting electromagnetic pulses that shut down entire wings of enemy vessels. Alien ships spun helplessly as power failed. The humans didn't waste time finishing them off. They let their allies behind them do the work. Every shot the Deathworlders fired landed with surgical precision. There was no panic in their movements. No shouting. No chaos. Just quiet coordination and overwhelming power. On the alien high command station orbiting a distant moon, the Council's generals watched the battle feed in silence. They had spent decades believing Earth was broken, fractured, unworthy of fear. But what they saw now was not a scattered race. It was an empire forged in the dark, patient and relentless. Their technology was sharper, their tactics colder, their fury buried deep beneath discipline. The aliens had underestimated Deathworlders, and now they were paying for it with everything they had. The alien fleet tried one last move. Their supercarriers formed a spearhead, aiming straight for the human flagship. Their idea was simple. Take out the head and the body will fall. But they didn't know what kind of predator they were facing. The moment their formation closed in, the human ships responded like a living organism. Flanking cruisers shifted positions, hidden strike craft surged forward, and a curtain of kinetic fire filled the void. The alien spearhead shattered before it even reached its target. Half their fleet was gone in less than a minute. Captain Rahaten's carrier tried to retreat, engines burning at maximum. But the humans were already there. A single corvette appeared out of the black, too close to intercept. A pulse hit the carrier like a hammer, shutting down every system. He looked out the viewport and saw the Deathworlder ship drifting silently beside him, its red lights pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. For a brief moment, their eyes met through the glass, alien and human. No words. No mercy. Just understanding. And then his screens went dark forever. Around him, the battlefield fell apart piece by piece. Alien dreadnoughts lost power. Carriers burned. Fighters vanished from the radar. The Deathworlder fleet tightened its grip like a vice, pulling the remaining enemy forces into a kill zone where no one escaped. There was no sound, no triumph. Just the cold rhythm of destruction. Some alien captains begged for surrender. But surrender was meaningless here. The humans didn't want their territories. They didn't want prisoners. They wanted the Warzone. And they were taking it. A single voice echoed once again through every open channel. The same calm human voice from the beginning. This is our space now. The Alien Council, watching from their distant station, could do nothing. Their most powerful fleets were gone. Their lines of defense were ash. All their years of arrogance had led them to this one night. A night when ghosts from a forgotten world returned with fire in their hands. They had believed Earth was weak. They had believed Deathworlders were history. They were wrong. The storm kept building. Human battleships advanced through the wreckage like giants walking through fire. Railguns tore through what little resistance was left. The alien fleet, once proud, once untouchable, was reduced to burning debris floating in silence. And yet, the Deathworlders didn't stop. They kept moving forward, precise and focused, their formation unbroken. Every alien soldier who survived that night would remember it forever. Not for the noise. Not for the explosions. But for the way the humans moved like the void itself. Silent, unstoppable, inevitable. The Warzone no longer belonged to the galaxy. It belonged to the Deathworlders. And the galaxy, watching in stunned silence, finally understood why you should never forget a predator just because it's quiet. The Council had built their final defense like a monument to arrogance. A massive dreadnought, larger than any ship humanity had ever faced during their exile, waited in the dead center of the last defensive line. Its hull shimmered with layers of armor thicker than fortress walls, its cannons capable of tearing moons apart. Entire civilizations had poured their resources into that one weapon, believing it would make them untouchable. They called it the Sovereign, a symbol of their power. But the galaxy didn't understand what kind of storm they had invited. The Deathworlders were not here to negotiate, not here to retreat, and certainly not here to bow to a symbol. They came to end the war. Across the wreckage-strewn void, the last surviving alien fleets gathered around the Sovereign like frightened children hiding behind a monster. Their ships were broken, their formations shattered, their morale in ruins. But still, the Council told them this dreadnought would turn the tide. No ship can stand against the Sovereign, the Admiralty repeated. No army can pierce its shield. And maybe once, that would have been true. But tonight, they were not facing an ordinary enemy. They were facing Deathworlders who had waited in silence for decades. From the black, the human fleet approached in perfect formation. Not fast, not loud, just steady. The alien crews felt it before they even saw it. A quiet pressure filled the comm channels, a static that made their hearts race. Sensors flickered, cameras glitched, targeting systems refused to lock. It was the same feeling they'd felt before, the calm before the storm. The humans were near. The Sovereign fired first. A beam of blue energy carved across the battlefield like the hand of a god, slicing through the void. The blast tore through dozens of wrecks and ripped entire asteroids apart. The shockwave alone could have flattened a city. But the Deathworlders didn't even flinch. Their fleet didn't scatter or break formation. Instead, they adjusted, like a shadow bending around a blade. The beam hit nothing. The alien bridge erupted in panic. "They're too fast," one officer screamed. "They're not fast," the Supreme Admiral corrected, his voice shaking. "They are precise." That was the real horror. The Deathworlders didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't rush. They didn't fire blindly. They waited until every angle, every distance, every single weakness was laid bare. The Deathworlder flagship led the advance. Its black hull burned with crimson light, railguns warming up like a heartbeat. Every alien eye turned toward it, the shape of something built not for defense, not for peace, but for pure, unrelenting war. Smaller human ships peeled off and vanished into the shadows, flanking wide. They weren't retreating. They were surrounding. The Sovereign had become prey and didn't even know it yet. The alien dreadnought launched its entire arsenal. Hundreds of torpedoes, energy beams, and rail slugs screamed across the void. The humans countered with elegance. Their smaller ships darted through the storm, slicing down missiles with surgical precision. Some torpedoes simply vanished, jammed and redirected by invisible interference. Others hit decoy flares that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The Deathworlders were cutting down a storm like it was a drizzle. Then the real attack began. A ripple pulsed through the black, a coordinated strike so fast the alien fleet barely had time to register it. From opposite sides of the battlefield, railgun fire converged on the Sovereign's shield. The impact shook the void like thunder. For a brief moment, the shield held. Then hairline fractures spread across its surface like cracks in glass. Alien officers gasped. No fleet had ever made their shield falter before. Before they could recover, the second wave hit. Dozens of hypervelocity rounds slammed into the dreadnought, followed by electromagnetic pulses that fried everything they touched. The Sovereign roared like a wounded beast, its shield flickering, its guns misfiring. Inside the bridge, alarms wailed. Systems failed one after another. The Supreme Admiral shouted for counterfire, but no one was listening anymore. Panic had taken over. And then the humans revealed the ace they had hidden for years. From behind the front lines, something massive moved. Larger than anything the galaxy had seen since the old wars. A black shape emerged from the dark, dwarfing even the alien dreadnought. Its outline was sharp and silent, like a blade forged in a nightmare. It was humanity's flagship, the true flagship. The one they had built in the silence of exile. A single ship built to break empires. The alien officers stared at their screens in disbelief. "It's bigger than the Sovereign," someone whispered. The Supreme Admiral clenched his fists. "It's not just bigger," he said. "It's theirs." The Deathworlder flagship raised its cannons. The glow along its hull burned brighter, spreading like fire. The entire battlefield fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. When the first shot came, it didn't sound like war. It sounded like the end of it. The round tore through the Sovereign's weakened shield like paper, slamming into its hull with the force of a dying star. Metal screamed. Armor ripped. Fire burst from the dreadnought's spine as its entire weapons array went offline. Alien officers were thrown from their stations. Emergency lights flashed. Their greatest weapon was bleeding in the dark. The Deathworlders didn't stop there. Smaller human ships moved in, hitting every weak point at once. Explosions bloomed across the dreadnought's hull like flowers made of fire. One by one, its massive guns fell silent. Its engines failed. Its proud golden lights dimmed into red. And then, finally, the voice returned over every frequency. The same human voice that had spoken at the start. "Calm. Cold. Your war is over." The Sovereign tried to fire one last time, but nothing happened. Its systems were dead. Its crew could only watch as the Deathworlder flagship aimed again, locking on to its core. A final shot split the dreadnought clean in half. For a long moment, the galaxy held its breath. The symbol of the Council, the thing that was supposed to make humanity kneel, was nothing but drifting metal now. The alien fleets that remained stopped fighting. Some shut down their weapons. Others turned and ran. None of it mattered. The Warzone belonged to the Deathworlders. On the alien homeworlds, the live feeds went silent. Entire cities stared at black screens, listening to the sound of their empire dying in the cold. In hidden bunkers and command stations, alien leaders whispered the one word they had sworn never to speak again. Humans. The Deathworlder fleet did not cheer. There were no victory speeches. No banners. They moved through the wreckage like a tide rolling across a broken shore, collecting nothing, claiming nothing. They weren't here to rule. They were here to remind the galaxy of the truth, that no fleet, no shield, no empire could ever erase them. And as the last light of the Sovereign faded into the void, the universe finally understood why Deathworlders had always been feared. Not because they were many, but because when they came, nothing could stop them.